Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we're going to be taking a look at the results of, and your comments from, the poll that asked the question, what is the best song or musical piece in all of Star Wars? And a lot of the time going into these polls, I have a pretty good feeling about how they're going to turn out, but this was one of those times when I really had no clue how you would all vote, and I thought it could go pretty much any way, to be honest with you. And then when I saw the results, I was quite surprised, because as you can see, Duel of the Fates won this rather easily, getting 43% of the vote, and I really thought, one way or the other, this would be much closer. But that didn't turn out to be the case, and 20 points behind and in second place was Binary Sunset, or the Force theme, with 23% of the vote, followed very closely by the Imperial March, which got 22%, and then the main theme, which only got 6% of the vote. There was also another 6% of you that thought something else other than one of these four was the best. Anyway, wasting no time, let's get right to your comments. And as usual, some were picked because they were highly rated, others selected by me personally, and a few others were just randomly selected from the crowd. But as usual, we'll start with the top rated comment, which this week came to us from Luke Skywalker, who said, I mean, all of them are a masterpiece. And while Luke, I may not have agreed with you when you said the Jedi needed to end, but I can totally agree with you here. Because the crazy thing about John Williams' work on Star Wars is that there's none of it that I could point out and say, well, I really don't like that at all. Now, sure, some of his pieces are better than others, hence we're here with this poll, but all of them seem to fall somewhere between being a masterpiece and just being really damn good. All I know is that when I listen to any Star Wars soundtrack, I really never feel inclined to skip a track because there's none of them that I don't, at least like or appreciate on some level. And this all goes along with what Nerd Talk said in their comment here. All are great in their own way, and there is no definitive answer. Any answer would be correct here. This is all just subjective in how you are as a person. This isn't looking at a movie and thinking one is bad. This is looking at the best movies in the world and trying to pick the very best. And you're absolutely right. This isn't about crowning a champion or being able to point at one track in particular and saying that is the best in all of Star Wars hands down. It's about finding which one resonates with you personally and which one resonates with the most people, I guess. For example, my favorite track, or the one that really gets to me every single time I hear it, isn't even on this list, but we'll get to it later on. Next up, this comment from Brian Schwartz, who simply said, Battle of the Heroes, which yes, is fantastic, and many of you brought it up in the comments and the reasons why it's so great, and it did deserve to be on this poll if there were more slots for me to use. But unfortunately for it, in the last poll that dealt with the prequels, it got beat by Duel of the Fates by an almost 4-1 margin. Though Chocobo Rider makes a good defense for it here in this comment. For me, it is Battle of the Heroes. Of course, I'm biased since I watched Revenge of the Sith in the cinema and it's my favorite Star Wars film, but hear me out. 3 films, 13 years of a master-student relationship to build, and it only takes at least a week or two to make it all crumble. It is the culmination of everything that went wrong, the downfall of the Chosen One, and what made one of the best Jedi Masters of all time severely reduced to a washed-up loner. The track sounds so good out of context, but that feeling of hype, sorrow, and despair absolutely amplifies and multiplies 1,000-fold when given the emotional context and the significance of that moment. It's heart-wrenching, heart-pounding, emotionally damaging, morally destructive, and many emotions that I can't even start to explain. For that track alone, I can write a 20-page essay, make a PowerPoint, and host a Socratic seminar at once because it's so good. And, well, I'll expect that 20-page essay on my desk by the morning. But seriously, well said, and I couldn't agree with you more. Now on to this comment from King Cameron, who said, Whilst Duel of the Fates and Battle of the Heroes are the most epic, Imperial March is the most iconic, nothing to me feels more like Star Wars than Binary Sunset. Almost every time a rendition of Binary Sunset is played, I get chills, even when Rey catches the lightsaber in the forest. It was there when we were introduced to Luke Skywalker, and a rendition played at Anakin Skywalker's funeral. It feels the most like Star Wars. Then this comment from William Brown, who said, Binary Sunset is Star Wars. I always get chills when I hear it. It captures everything about the saga and Luke Skywalker perfectly. It's a masterpiece in every sense of the word. Then this comment from That Tricky Trickster. Come on guys, it's definitely the Force theme. A lot of its melodies and tones are even in most, if not all, other musical pieces in the saga. Even the theme itself is inserted in other themes. John Williams basically made a theme for what essentially amounts to as the god in this universe. And it's honestly one of the most powerful, majestic, and memorable themes in all of cinema. Almost everyone on Earth can recognize it as being from Star Wars. It's peacefully, beautifully inspiring, and even magical. Then on to this comment from Ryan McCarthy, who said, Binary Sunset or Force theme. No other musical piece in Star Wars tells and feels like Star Wars other than that. Every other score is good, but the Force theme is the only one that can make you relive every iconic moment in Star Wars. Also, Star Wars is a drama, not a comedy, not a romantic comedy, not a chick flick, or even an action movie, and the Force theme sums up Star Wars in a perfect way. And then finally onto this comment from Rachel Furtado, who said, "Though I love Duel of the Fates, I still think Binary Sunset Force theme is not only more iconic and better musically, it immediately demands an emotion from me. I can feel Luke's longing in A New Hope. It's fighting with Darth Vader theme in Anakin vs. Obi-Wan, and then when Luke dies in The Last Jedi, I can't help but cry every time I watch it, and now I'm crying again. Great." And though, like I said at the top, I wasn't sure how this poll would play out, I actually would have guessed Binary Sunset would win this thing, for many of the reasons pointed out in these comments. Not the least of which, though, is that, yeah, it kind of finds its way into many different tracks, and it's been used at some of the greatest moments in all of Star Wars. It brilliantly permeates the whole saga, and it's been used in so many different ways. From the classic scene of Luke staring off at the twin suns, to just a few scenes later when he's forcing himself to look upon the charred remains of his aunt and uncle. And say what you will about Rey, but hearing the Force theme kick in when the saber flew to her in The Force Awakens was awesome. Though if that had been Luke that the saber flew to when the Force theme kicked in, well damn, that's probably would have been one of my top 5 moments in all of Star Wars, if not the number 1 moment, after having waited all those years to see Luke again, and for him to make his entrance like that. But we're supposed to let the past die or something, right? Anyway, speaking of Rey, there were a couple comments like this one from Sam Austin, who said, "I know these movies, this character isn't hugely popular, but I love Rey's theme." Then this comment from Tori K, who said, "First off, all of the above is my answer." Good answer. Second, for all of the views on Rey, good or bad, her theme was something special. John Williams made something new, unique, yet still very Star Wars with her theme. It actually feels like it's a part of her. Goes to show how even music can play a part in creating a character. And you know, I actually really enjoy Rey's theme. I think it's great, and it's probably my second favorite behind Kylo Ren's theme in the sequel trilogy. And I also agree that music can help create or make a character memorable. And though I'm no musical expert or anything remotely close to it, when I hear Rey's theme, I get this sense of wonder or curiosity, yet there's also this hint of fear or hesitation at the same time. And as I've said before, I like Rey in The Force Awakens, especially in the first half of the movie. In fact, her introduction, in large part thanks to her theme, was pretty much perfect, but then if you play that same theme music with Rey in The Last Jedi, it doesn't seem to fit anymore. Yes, characters are supposed to grow as the story goes on, but for me, what I enjoyed about Rey in The Force Awakens was completely lost in the very next movie. She feels like a totally different character, and the theme really doesn't seem to fit her anymore. And yes, of course, you're free to disagree with me in the comments below. Alright, let's move on to another comment. This time it comes to us from Richard Gray, who said, "The song in Return of the Jedi where Luke defeats Vader." And that song is, of course, Jedi's Fury, which features my favorite piece of music in all of Star Wars. That being after Vader threatens to turn Leia to the dark side, and Luke gives into his anger and attacks Vader and starts to push him back and eventually chops off his hand. That beautiful haunting music that plays in the background is just perfect. It gives me chills each and every time I hear it, and it just has this feeling like the fate of the galaxy is on the line, which it is. Alright, next up this comment from Nathan S, who says, "There's a lot of pieces that don't get as many mentions but are deserving of votes. Yoda's theme, Anakin's Dark Deeds, Asteroid Field. Gosh, there are so many. I don't know all their names, but they are so good." And then this comment from Matt Jones, who simply said, "Leia's theme has always been my favorite." And yes, all of the ones mentioned in these two comments, and Asteroid Field has always been a big favorite of mine. And plenty of the others that some of you brought up are worth mentioning and certainly worth being in this poll, if I could list more than 5 choices. Okay, let's start to wrap this up with just a few more comments, starting with this one from Pixie Bubbles, who said, "Imperial March has been stuck in my head all day." And I once got asked, and I don't know why I got asked this, but I did, what song I would want to play every time I walked into a room. Like, what would be my personal theme song that would have to play every time I appeared? And I, of course, picked the Imperial March. Anyway, next comment then comes to us from DJMaxS, who said, "I'm actually surprised that the majority of votes are for Duel of the Fates, but I mean, all of the themes are perfect for what they represent. The main theme represents the saga in general, so it would be too on the nose if it was the best song. The Imperial March represents the dark side of the Force and the tyranny of Darth Vader, the Emperor, and all of the Galactic Empire. Binary Sunset represents the New Hope, the light side, the meditation, the wisdom, and the good and pure hearts of the people who have affinity with the light side of the Force. But Duel of the Fates, that theme represents the fight between the light and the dark, the good and the bad, but also represents Star Wars as a whole. To me at least, it's what comes to mind when people say Star Wars, or lightsaber, or simply what it sounds in my head when I think about epic duels, fights, Star Wars, sci-fi in general. But I love all of them, and they are all masterpieces made by the absolute genius John Williams. So very well said, and you sum up why I think Duel of the Fates may have won this. Though it's not the theme of Star Wars itself, or not the theme of the Force even, somehow Duel of the Fates feels like the theme of the conflict in Star Wars. It represents good versus evil, and somehow perfectly translates this epic, infinite struggle between the light side and the dark, the Sith versus the Jedi, into a single piece of music. And when you hear it, you can't help but think about just how epic Star Wars truly is. Alright, and now on to our last comment that comes to us from Humans who simply said, "They're all good, all of them, sent via flickering hologram." And only now, at the end, do we understand how lucky and fortunate we Star Wars fans were to have the amazing John Williams score this legendary saga, as he begins work on Episode 9, which will be his last Star Wars film ever. And it's crazy to think how perhaps the greatest film visionary of our time, that being George Lucas, ended up working with perhaps the greatest composer of our time, that being John Williams. The coming together or merger of these two was like the forming of a perfect storm that was so powerful it changed the landscape of film forever. And 40 years later, both names are uttered with reverence by any true fan of film or music or both. And though this poll was obviously done in good fun, what I truly learned, or maybe I should say just had confirmed, is that there is no best piece of John Williams' music from Star Wars. It's all terrific, and his contributions to this franchise simply cannot be overstated. Well, that's all I've got for this time. And let me now take a moment to thank all of those who support me on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated. And if any of you out there are interested in supporting me as well, a link to it can be found in the description below. And even just $1 a month will get you access to my Discord server, where we're always talking some Star Wars. Next, let me invite you to check out my fiance's YouTube channel. We do some meme reviews and have plans on doing other, more fun things over there. So if you want to see a different side of me, feel free to check it out. Link to that will also be in the description below. And finally, please feel free to tell me your thoughts on the amazing John Williams, or what your favorite piece of his work is. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.